Utopia section. Envisioning free energy for all and an end to money is only the beginning. The golden age for humanity is just around the corner. Utopia. Utopia or bust. Robert Anton Wilson. Speak of a utopian society, and most people will dismiss the notion as a wishful vision of a world filled with only good, well-intended optimists where everything always works out perfectly for everyone. Unfortunately, we share the earth with mentally sick individuals who exhibit skewed psyches with destructive intent. In our society, it is possible for ambitious individuals with antisocial behavior to become empowered as decision makers. A study in 2012 suggested that 1 out of every 10 Wall Street employees exhibits the characteristics of a clinical psychopath. This is 10%, whereas the average in the general population is 1%. Given the high percentage of dangerous and corrupt people, what could be more risky than having a privately owned Federal Reserve system with a monopoly on making money, backed up by a monopoly on military and private mercenary forces, in which such individuals can rise to the top of a highly centralized power pyramid? There goes our utopia. Humankind is caught in the cycle of fear, greed, apathy, and hatred. These human instincts drive hierarchical political systems and bureaucracies that often limit the basic human right of the pursuit of happiness. To begin looking into a utopian scenario, it will be necessary to dismantle the current plutocracy, ruled as it is by a few extremely rich people. A country or society governed by the wealthy will never care for all individuals, but instead will focus on its own self-interests. The dream of a golden age, first expressed by Hesiod and various philosophical writings such as Plato's Republic, has become a reoccurring theme in literature. Many have attempted to define the ideal society. For some, the dream has turned into a nightmare, a dystopia, which will also be covered in this section. Such dichotomies between the two possibilities come exactly at a time when we find ourselves at a critical turning point in human history. The path we are on is veering towards a global police state, the markers being the erosion of more and more human rights. We must change direction away from tyranny, but how? What are the guiding principles that would lead from war to peace, from hunger to abundance, and from domination to liberation, and from total oppression to the freedom of an enlightened golden age? How can we work toward a world where no one is violated or coerced in any way? Within our lifetime, we have the potential to create a peaceful and healthy civilization, one free of conflict and honoring the rights of every human on the planet. A world based on equality, integrity, freedom, and compassion. A world where everyone is able not only to survive, but to excel and pursue happiness. In a thriving society, no one is allowed to violate anyone else, except in genuine self-defense, which is redirected to peaceful resolution. And for the opposite, oppressive powers that be, let's refer to them now as the powers that were, because their time is up. If enough of us withdraw our support, the global domination agenda simply cannot work. We have the power of nonviolence and non-participation, along with the position of moral authority, a force which Mahatma Gandhi called the simple power of truth. The very notion of utopia is static. Yet the survival of any social system ultimately depends upon its ability to allow for appropriate change to improve society as a whole. The paths that we choose have enormous consequences in the future. Our choices in the next few decades will ultimately determine whether or not there will remain intelligent life on Earth. The future does not depend on our present-day beliefs or social customs, but will continue to evolve as a set of values unique to its own time. Maybe there is no such thing as utopia for all people, but we can surely do better than where we're headed. Think about not having to use gas anymore, or not having to pay taxes. Think about the poorest people in the world no longer worrying about having enough food to eat. Whose utopia? Throughout the history of civilization, few national leaders or politicians have attempted to articulate a comprehensive plan to improve the lives of all people under their jurisdiction. Although individuals such as Plato, Edward Bellamy, H.G. Wells, Karl Marx, and Howard Scott made some attempts to present a new civilization available to all, the established social order considered these individuals impractical dreamers with utopian designs that ran contrary to the inane elements of human nature. Arrayed against these social pioneers was a formidable status quo composed of vested interests that were comfortable with the way things were, and a populace at large that, out of years of indoctrination and conditioning, wanted no radical change. These became the millions of non-appointed guardians of the status quo. The outlook and philosophy of the leaders were consistent with their positions of differential advantage. In 1898, Edward Bellamy wrote the book Looking Backward. He conceived of an ideal egalitarian social system with many advanced ideas for its time. This bestseller generated a great deal of interest, and many people inquired as to how this type of cooperative utopian society could be developed. But Bellamy answered that he was just a writer and did not know how to create such a society. The proposals he presented, similar to those of Plato's Republic, the writings of Karl Marx, H.G. Wells in his book The Shape of Things to Come, and many others, all represent attempts to find workable solutions to the many problems that earlier civilizations were unable to resolve. There is little doubt that at the time of Bellamy's book, these social conditions were abdominal, which made a utopian ideal extremely appealing. What appeared to be lacking in most of these concepts, however, has been an overall plan and the necessary methods for a transitional system to enable the idea to become a reality. Most of the early visions of a better world did not allow for changes in either technology or human values, tending to arrest innovative efforts. Additionally, all have lacked a comprehensive set of blueprints, models, and a methodology for implementation. Finally, they lacked competent and determined individuals who could actually bring about such a transition. The answers do not lie in debate or philosophical discussion of values, but rather in methodology. Thus, what is needed is an operational definition of a better world. That operational definition in our age would be to constantly maximize existing and future benevolent technologies with the sole purpose of enhancing all human life and protecting the environment. It would, by definition, eliminate all human suffering. Today we have developed the necessary technology to surpass the fondest of hopes and visions that any social innovator could have dreamed of in the past. The fact that previous attempts at social change have failed is no justification for us to ever stop trying. It is merely the current leadership structure that has failed all the people of the world. The real danger lies in apathy and complacence. The only limitations to the future of humankind are those that we impose upon ourselves. It is now possible to relieve humanity of many of its unresolved problems through the humane application of technology that is already available. Our goal, if we are to accept the challenge, is to identify the impediments of reaching utopia and remove the guilty parties from power. Combating the illusion. The greatest advantage of our adversaries is how absurd the truth really seems to the mass population. How can we stand up against something that is not agreed upon or understood? The technique of divide and conquer works remarkably well. Our would-be masters are also masters at manipulation. They know if they can keep us using the FUD factor, that is, applying fear, uncertainty, and doubt to any subject they find threatening, the powers that were will continue winning. They own the mass media and control the message. Remember, as the John Mayer song lyrics suggest, when you own the information, you can bend it all you want. It is interesting to see the manner in which certain seemingly universal human experiences, telepathic communication, out-of-body flight, secret forms of identity, magical influence, altered states of energy or consciousness, occupy a rather curious place in our present Western culture. Whereas such marvels are vociferously denied or simply ignored in the halls of academic respectability, they are enthusiastically embraced in popular culture, such as fiction, film, and fantasy. People are obviously fascinated by such subjects and shell out billions of dollars per year for their special display. Yet our society will not discuss these subjects, at least not in a serious and sustained professional way. Popular culture has become our new mysticism. The public realm is our esoteric realm, and the paranormal is our biggest secret, hidden in plain sight. Each of us has the choice to create our lives so that we may participate in the utopian world that will manifest on Earth after this ascension process has completed. Let's never forget the end goal is a world without poverty, hunger, or suffering. Developing new human abilities are also in the realm of possibilities. A new world where full body levitation, spontaneous healings, instant telepathic communication, and other superhuman abilities become possible. It is an age where abundant love and sharing is the only currency and declared the new law of the land. The only thing that ever mattered was how much love you were willing to share while you were incarnated on Earth. But of course, we are told none of this. We need to figure it out for ourselves. But never forget that the truth will always stand on its own for all time. Truth is a constant in the universe. Braving a new world. It's pretty amazing that our society has reached a point where the effort necessary to extract oil from the ground, ship it to a refinery, turn it into plastic, shape it appropriately, truck it to a store, buy it, and bring it back home is considered to be less effort than what it takes to just wash the spoon when you're done using it. Let's rethink what we consume and what we create as waste. Engineers and technology have made our lives easier, and with a plan to move forward, we already have the technology to create a utopia where everyone on Earth has clean air, pure water, green energy, plentiful food, adequate shelter, a college education, advanced healthcare, the liberty to live our lives in peace, and the freedom to become whomever we choose according to our abilities. What would life be like in a cleaner, greener utopia where greed, ignorance, and slavery have no place? Star Trek series creator Gene Roddenberry was connected to a number of individuals who were basically foretelling future events. Some of the technology was featured on the show, including transporters, which are referred to today as stargates. This technology has been used on Earth for years. Another Star Trek concept is a food replicator, also called the materializer, which has also been around for decades. The latest versions can literally visualize what someone wants to eat, and then it will scan and produce the best possible reproduction of what the person visualized. Side innovations include the food acting as a mouth cleanser as it is being eaten, and it actually turns the synthetic food into pure nutrition when digested. If someone wants a steak, this device can make it out of matter, and the texture and taste will seem just like the real thing. We will not have to slaughter animals any longer. These extraordinary, major, and fantastic changes are available if we can break the bonds of secrecy. To reconceptualize a new world without the oppressive order, let's start with the basics. All of the 6,000 free energy patents currently being suppressed need to be retested, and if they work, released to the world. Let's begin by re-examining all Tesla technology, and if it stands the scrutiny of the scientific method, it needs to be released. The oil cartel and military-industrial billionaires have been holding back human technological development for their own monopoly. This must end, because with unlimited free energy, we can completely transform society, reestablish natural ecosystems, clean up polluted regions, reverse global warming, and provide fresh water to all people with desalination stations. When energy is no longer an expensive obstacle, we could pump the nutrients from the deep parts of the ocean to increase fish stocks near the surface by 10 times. We can reverse planetary degradation, save endangered species, create more wildlife habitats, and provide for everyone. We are all one planet. We are all one people. No one should be born with a price tag just to remain alive. We ultimately need to do away with money, end poverty, and will also end much of the current rate of deforestation. When energy no longer has a price tag, we can have a world of abundance, but there must be cooperation, fairness, and consensus among all people. The paradox of our time. While it would seem that we are naturally heading towards an era of unprecedented peace through technology and other means, we still have wars and tremendous human suffering. We live in a world of paradox, of great duality. We have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We retain more information but have less wisdom. We have more options for leisure and less fun. More conveniences, yet less time. We have more medicine and medical options, yet less wellness. More kinds of food available, but less nutrition. We have more media outlets, but less communication. More acquaintances, but fewer friends. We have increased our possessions, but reduced our values. We have conquered outer space, but neglected inner space. We have smashed the atom, but not our prejudices. Quote, when I was 5 years old, remembered Beatles musician John Lennon, quote, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life, end quote. Later in his life, when John Lennon became a crusader for peace, he noted how difficult it was to struggle against a society seemingly indifferent to the pursuit of happiness and focused on violence. Quote, when it gets down to having to use violence, then you are playing the system's game, Lennon said. Quote, the establishment will irritate you, pull your beard, flick your face to make you fight. Because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you. The only thing they don't know how to handle is nonviolence and humor, end quote. In our pursuit for a utopian society, or even a utopia within ourselves, we need to transcend the meaningless distractions and the temptation to become angry or fearful. Imagine all the people sharing all the world, as the lyrics to Imagine suggest. Quote, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one, end quote. John Lennon got it right again when he sang, all you need is love. No one is the solution for your own happiness but yourself. A government of peace. A sustainable future for the earth must be made a top priority. The economic impact of total military disarmament, to name only the most obvious consequence of peace, would revise the production and distribution patterns of the globe to a degree that would make the changes in the past 50 years seem insignificant. We can plan in advance the whole transition to make it go as smoothly as possible. Political, technological, sociological, cultural, and ecological changes would be equally far-reaching. The governing and relations between nations after total disarmament are basically judicial in nature. We would need to plan for institutions similar to a world court or a United Nations, but vested with real authority. The United Nations Security Council needs to be rezoned. The most populous land masses should be divided into the 8 general regions of the world. 1 vote should go to each region, which includes South America and the Caribbean, North America, China, Japan and Southeast Asia, Europe, the Muslim Middle East, India, and Africa. Each of the 8 zones could only veto an item that is directly within their boundary, which would lead to a much more effective government that prioritizes the sharing of resources and governance equally among all people. We need a whole new social contract, and it will be up to each of us to create such a system when the powers that were are finally gone. In the future, we will only want to use energy sources which are 100% clean, cheap, decentralized, and safe. Energy must become strictly zero emission, have minimal life cycle environmental impact, and be completely renewable. Energy must be provided free or very affordable to everyone, with an end to the energy monopolies. It will become a crime to manufacture devices that emit noxious gases. Energy must also be decentralized, with no more power grids or power plants. And lastly, let's make energy a benevolent technology that is completely safe and publicly accountable. No weapons use, no secrecy, and no greed. Without a social system based on money, greed can be eliminated. Without greed, there is no envy or desire for material items. And without desire, according to the Buddha, there is no longer any suffering. We have been relentlessly conditioned to think that money will buy our happiness, where just the opposite is true. Money is simply a way to transform our efforts into a way where we can get what we need in life. For example, the television show Star Trek was a utopian view of a peaceful human race set several hundred years into the future, charting out the unknown regions of the universe in the name of exploration. There was never a single scene where humans were seen using a currency of any kind to get what they needed. They would tell the computer what they wanted and out it would come. Simple as that. Money will have no place in a utopian world, at least not one that has found a lasting peace, free from destruction, and where all people are created equal. But as we shall see, there are several hurdles to jump before we can get there.